Hi Ramanand, welcome to this edition of the Smart Levers series.
Thanks, Harish.
So today we want to talk about one of the diets that we have always been talking about. What is this diet? Is it going to make me thin? Is it going to help me gain weight? And where is it going to, add weight?
So it's going to add hopefully some smart weight to you, Harish. So Harish, you call yourself an infovore. You consume a lot of information, but sometimes, like with people who consume a lot of food and drink, we might do it not so deliberately, and so we need a pause to come and look at our diets when it comes to consuming information. So just like with nutrition, since we consume or ingest a lot of information, we also express a lot of information. We need to do it a little more deliberately, and that is where the analogy of a diet is very helpful. So for us, a curiosity diet is something that you have deliberately chosen for yourselves. You can call it a mixture of different curiosity food groups. An example of a curiosity food group could be something that you're consuming which is deliberately directed towards your work. You want to learn something, you want to find out what your competitors are doing. All this is a curiosity group tailored to become making you better at your work. But then there is also the reading or the watching that we do for our own progress. Watching a smart lever episode or a smart cast with us would be in that. It may not help you immediately in your bug fix tomorrow, but it's going to help you become stronger, better over a period of time. Sometimes we do this for pure pleasure. We might read fiction, we might read biographies, we might watch Netflix shows. That happens for pleasure. And sometimes it is entirely random. So if you assemble the curiosity diet in the right way, then you can have a balance of all of these. It doesn't have to be excessively biased towards one of these food groups. And just like we need to have a little bit of carbs, proteins, and yes, there is a role for that little sweet dish as well. Your curiosity diet, if it is balanced, then you are going to have a balanced life as well.
Right. And just to set the record straight, both of us have also done a TikTok videos course from what I know. So that was probably the left of field input into our curiosity diets there, right?
Absolutely. And because a lot of people listening to us will be familiar with libraries, whenever you randomly pick a book that has been just written by someone else before you, you like the cover, you decide to try it out. That's an example of randomness in your diet. And every time you come to choose to think and say, hey, I am doing performance management for my team and my team is distributed. Can you help me with information that can make this exercise more fruitful for everyone? And it's a more deliberate exercise of your curiosity diet, and you're going to someone who can prepare that meal for you in a particular way.
So this seems like something which is very, very specific to individuals and individual choices, right? But can you tell me how we have used the whole concept of curiosity diet? And this is something that we have coined and we have sort of come up with the whole notion. So how have we used this idea in our work at Choose to Think and CTQ Compounds?
Right. So curiosity, you can look at it at multiple levels, and there are different flavors of curiosity. Right now, let's look at the one where you take in new information and you process it and you bring it out in a form that adds value to yourself or your work. So now this doesn't have to be restricted to individuals. There are teams who could have a curiosity routine and eventually the organization as a whole. So when it comes to individuals, choose to think compounds. They help you read more widely, more wisely. Our future stack helps you be aware of what is changing in the future. And then you can think about how you should respond to that. So these are examples of something an individual could add to your curiosity diet. It could be a short term exercise, it could be a more long term systemic exercise that you can do. It brings more breadth, it makes you a better conversationalist. All those benefits come to you. Now, what happens if you bring a team together? Let's say a team of 5, a team of 50 that is doing some of these routines together. Then you have the option where the whole is much bigger than the sum of its parts. So, for example, we have a weekly future fitness session where people will come and they will. So, Harish will talk about a course that he has taken. Sirisha will come and talk to us about culture. Ankita will tell us something that she's learned about writing, and so on and so forth. And then we can have a discussion about it and apply it to our work. That 1 hour of curiosity can become so much better than just one person doing it. And so we have an offering, Connections Cafe, where people will come together for an hour and we will set them some curious challenges. So sometimes it could be read something in that short period and discuss it. Sometimes it could be a game which is built on something like improv. It could also be a good old fashioned dictionary and done. But if you do it in a smart way, then you can actually go away with so much more knowledge, so much more information about the world, which will translate into your work as well. And finally, at an organizational level, this practice of curiosity, is very important, because many of the companies that we work with, these could be R&D sites, these could be consultants, they're all similar in nature. So they have the same kinds of channels that they follow, the same kinds of news sites, the same kind of customers that they talk to. And so their curiosity diet becomes very, very stereotypical. And so what a good exercise like this can do is to ensure that you're asking, what else should we be knowing? What more randomness can we introduce? And so we've done some interesting exercises around, say, creating a curiosity group, which could be an asynchronous Teams or a Slack channel or even a WhatsApp group, where you commit to consuming that information, sharing information with each other. And that makes you, much more better at your work, much more relevant in the future.
Right. I think if they do a word cloud of this episode, Ramanan, they're going to hear exercise, they're going to hear diet. So, and fitness, future fitness
Absolutely.
as well.
And since you brought up a word map, a very simple exercise that we've always done is that you get people mention three words that they are interested in: hobbies, professional interests. And when you do that and ask that question appropriately, and you put together a word cloud of what your group has said, suddenly you'll realize that there is so much diversity in a group. And if you don't have that diversity, then it's a signal that you need to do something about it. But usually there is something that I am interested in that you've probably not even heard of. And that's an opportunity for both me and you to be curious about that topic.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And why do you consider this to be such an important part of the Uplevelers toolkit?
Right. So as an upleveler, you are going to be, improving yourselves. You're going to help your teams improve themselves. You're going to be responsible for contributing to innovation in an organization. So all of these things need the right curiosity diet, because if you get too caught up in what we call the treadmill of today, then you don't really have anything to contribute to innovation, because where are the new ideas going to come from? They're going to come largely from talking to people, ingesting new information, connecting the dots in previously unseen kinds of ways. And so if all that you know is your work that you did yesterday and the day before, then your curiosity diet is going to be extremely Spartan. It's going to be extremely non nutritious for you. So, as an individual, this is going to help you build that perspective, build that breadth of knowledge, and it is going to open the door for cross pollination for you. The other thing is that for teams, an exercise like this of the right curiosity diet, it's like having a meal together. And so it has that same vibe, right? When you have a meal together, when you're solving problems together, when you're being curious together, that has that brings teams together, that will get them to learn new things in a way that is informal. And that's the beauty of that so-called water cooler conversation, that you can ingest new information in sort of interesting ways. Finally, I would like to say that because we live in a world which is abundant in information, sometimes we get guilty about what we consume. At night, when we are shutting down for the day, or we are maybe putting an entry in our journal, we sometimes feel guilty about what we have consumed because we spend too much time on Twitter or on Netflix, or even lost in our work, that we sometimes feel there is more to life than just this. When you do the right kind of curiosity diet, it reduces that guilt, because when you consume Twitter, you're consuming Twitter with full focus because you want new information to come into you. And similarly, when you're watching a Netflix show, you're doing it with no guilt attached. So this is the reason I think all knowledge workers will benefit from the right practice of a curiosity diet.
Right. And when you were talking about people doing this together, Raman, I was trying to draw this comparison, like how breaking bread together was a way of, warring nations to come together. If the kings have actually eaten from the same plate, then they will never go against each other and things like that, right? So this is also a way of doing that in the remote world, where how are you
Absolutely.
going to get people to do this together? And you're going into a journey of an unknown, right? You're trying to
Correct.
figure out how things are.
Yeah. And in a remote world, because of this so called loss of visibility, we speak of it as losing line of sight and it having to be replaced by some other sort of senses, like, say, remote sensing or radar. Now, if I don't know anything about you, I don't know what your interests are, or I don't have interests that can help in a conversation between the two of us, then over time, those bonds are going to fray, they're going to get just become very, very loose. But if I know that Harish is into football and I don't have to be into football, but I just need to know enough to engage you in a conversation around what's happening with someone like Lionel Messi at Barcelona, or what is
Not
happening,
at
what is
Barcelona anymore.
uh, and what is happening at the Super League, the equivalent of the Indian Cricket Premier League. These are points for us to build that common ground and do the equivalent of breaking bread. So curiosity is also an emotion. It is something that puts you in a open-minded mode where you're willing to see the other person's point of view. And if you tie this in with our episode on confirmation bias, it can break a lot of these unsaid filters that we have in front of us. And so the curiosity, when practiced, can hopefully bring warring teams together and warring members of teams together, if not nations,
Right. Yeah. And they don't really need to be,
at war.
at war. So on that note, Raman, I think this is a great episode. I'm hoping that people who have listened to this, watch this, sort of sit and create a diet plan for themselves, figuring out what sources they want to look at and how do they want to inject this into their team. And if they need any help, they can always get in touch with us.